Hey guys, welcome back to more HOA stories. In this Ripestories video, imagine surviving 2 tours and an IED as a veteran only to get targeted at home by a woman with a clipboard and an ego. This HOA Karen says that my medically modified van does not match neighborhood standards even though she has zero authority over my property. Then she makes one call and tries to ruin my life. Let's dive right into the video. The first one is titled HOA Karen orders tow on disabled veteran, ADA is not amused. So I'm a disabled veteran who served 2 tours overseas before an IED changed my life forever. I've been in a wheelchair for the past 8 years, and while I've made peace with my new reality, I refuse to let it define me or limit me. Part of that independence is my specifically modified van that allows me to drive despite being wheelchair-bound. It's got hand controls, a lowered floor, and a side ramp that deploys automatically. And yeah, it's bigger than a regular vehicle and it's not winning any beauty contests, but it is my lifeline to the outside world. And when I bought my house 3 years ago, I specifically looked for a property with a wider driveway and no homeowner association. The property is not part of any HOA, which was actually one of the main reasons I chose it, and my house sits on a corner lot, and while the neighborhood around me is part of an HOA, my property predates the HOA and was never included. I made absolutely sure of this before I bought because I'd heard enough HOA horror stories to last a lifetime. For the first couple of years everything was fine, my neighbors were friendly enough and a few of them asked about my service and thanked me, which was nice. Nobody ever said a word about my van, but then about 6 months ago, a new family moved in 2 houses down. I didn't think much of it at first, but enter Larissa. She was in her late 50s, perfectly styled hair that probably required a daily salon visit, and the kind of tight smile that told you she was already judging you before you opened your mouth. Within a month of moving in, she had somehow gotten herself elected as the new HOA president. I know this because she made it her personal mission to inform the entire neighborhood by going door to door. When she knocked on my door, I answered and she immediately glanced past me at my van in the driveway. Her expression soured like she had bitten into a lemon or something. She said, "Hello, I'm Larissa, the new HOA president. I'm making rounds to introduce myself and remind everyone about our community standards." "Nice to meet you," I said, "but just so you know, my property is not part of the HOA." She blinked like I'd spoken a different language. "Excuse me?" My house predates the HOA and was never included in it. I made sure of that when I bought the place. Her smile got tighter. "Well, that may be technically true, but you're still part of this neighborhood, and we have certain standards that benefit everyone's property values." "I understand that," I said, trying to stay polite, "but those standards don't apply to my property." She glanced at my van again. "We will see about that." That should have been my first warning. A week later, I found a note on my windshield that said, "Your vehicle is not in compliance with neighborhood standards. Please make arrangements for alternate parking." No signature, but I knew exactly who it was from. I threw it away and didn't think much more about it. Then the notes started coming more frequently, always printed, never signed. They get more specific. Oversized vehicles must be parked in garages or off-street. My van literally was in my driveway, which is off-street, and I don't have a garage. Another one, commercial appearing vehicles are prohibited. And just by the way, my van is not commercial, it's just a personal vehicle with medical modifications. After the 5th or 6th one, I'd had enough. I walked down to Larissa's house and knocked. She answered wearing workout clothes that probably cost more than my monthly VA disability check. "Hi Larissa, we need to talk about these notes," I said, holding up the latest one. "What notes?" she asked innocently. "The ones you've been leaving on my van." "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Look," I said, keeping my voice level, "my property is not in the HOA, and you have no authority over where I park my vehicle, especially since it is on my own property. And this van is not optional for me, it's just how I get around. I'm a disabled veteran, this is a medically necessary vehicle." Her expression did not change. "I'm sure there are other parking options available to you, storage facilities for instance." I actually laughed, I couldn't help it. "You want me to rent a storage unit and keep my vehicle there? The vehicle I need to drive every day? Do you understand how ridiculous that sounds?" "I don't appreciate your tone. I'm just trying to maintain the aesthetic quality of our neighborhood, and that vehicle is an eyesore." "Well, that eyesore is protected under federal disability law," I said. "You should probably look into the Fair Housing Act and ADA regulations before you keep pushing this." And she actually rolled her eyes at me. Don't threaten me with legal nonsense. I know my rights as an HOA president. And I know my rights as a disabled veteran on my own private property, I said. Stop leaving notes on my van. She closed the door in my face. I thought that might be the end of it, but I was wrong. 2 weeks later, I came home from a doctor's appointment to find a tow truck in my driveway hooking up to my van. I rolled up as fast as I could. "Hey, what are you doing?" I shouted. The driver looked uncomfortable. "Got a work order, man. I'm just doing my job." "A work order from who? This is my vehicle on my private property." And that's when I saw Larissa walking down the sidewalk with this satisfied smirk on her face. "You were warned multiple times about that vehicle," she called out. "You have no authority here," I yelled back. "This is my property, not HOA property." "The neighborhood is my concern," she said. "That van has been reported as abandoned." Abandoned? I drove it 2 hours ago. The tow truck driver was looking between us, clearly uncomfortable. "Look, buddy, I got a call that this was an abandoned vehicle." From her, I interrupted, pointing at Larissa. "She does not own this property and she has no legal right to have my vehicle towed. If you take my van, that is theft and I will call the police." The driver hesitated. Larissa jumped in and said, "I'm the HOA president and this vehicle violates multiple community standards." "This property is not in your HOA." I was really angry now. "Call the police right now and we will sort this out." "I will wait." The driver pulled out his phone and stepped away. Larissa stood there with arms crossed, looking completely confident. She actually thought she was gonna win this. The police arrived about 15 minutes later and I explained the situation. Larissa kept interrupting, saying, "This is a neighborhood matter. The police shouldn't even be involved." The officer finally turned to her and said, "Ma'am, you called a tow truck for a vehicle on private property that you have no authority over. That is filing a false report at minimum, and this man owns this property and this vehicle. You need to leave him alone." "But the neighborhood standards." "Don't apply this to his property," the officer said firmly. "If you continue to harass him, he can file charges." "Do you understand this?" Larissa's face went red. She turned and walked away without another word. The officer turned to me and mentioned that what she was doing could be considered harassment and that I should document everything and consider speaking with a lawyer about my rights. He also told the tow truck driver that there was no valid work order and he needed to unhook my van immediately. And after that incident, I did contact a lawyer. A local veterans legal aid organization connected me with someone who dealt with disability rights cases. We documented everything, all the notes, the tow truck incident, the police report. My lawyer sent Larissa a formal cease and desist letter explaining that her actions violated my rights under federal fair housing law and the ADA. I thought surely that would be the end of it. I mean, what reasonable person keeps pushing after getting a legal letter and a police warning? But Larissa was not reasonable. The harassment did not stop, it just changed form. She stopped leaving physical notes, but I started receiving messages from a blocked number with vague threats about legal action. My lawyer had me forward all of them to her, and she included them in the complaint as evidence of ongoing harassment. But then one morning I came out to find a boot on my van. An actual wheel boot like you would see from parking enforcement. So I called the police again. The officer who responded seemed familiar with the situation and mentioned that the previous incident had been noted in their system with my address, and it turns out that Larissa had contacted a private parking enforcement company and gave them false information that she had authority over the property. The company later confirmed that they had been misled about who owned the property and their authorization. They removed the boot and apologized profusely. They were also pretty angry at Larissa for putting them in that position, and that was it. That was the final straw. My lawyer filed a formal complaint with HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Even though I was not technically in the HOA, her harassment was based on my disability and affected my housing rights. We included everything: the notes, the tow truck incident, the boot, the messages, and all the police reports. Then about 2 months after the tow truck incident, I received official notification that HUD was opening an investigation into Fair Housing Act violations, which includes ADA protections for disability accommodations in housing, and they took it very seriously. They interviewed me, they interviewed Larissa, they interviewed neighbors, and they pulled HOA records, the whole thing. Larissa apparently tried to claim that she was just enforcing community standards and did not know about my disability, which was complete BS, since I told her directly and it was in the cease and desist letter. Several neighbors actually came forward and reported that Larissa had made comments about my van at HOA meetings, specifically mentioning my disability and saying things like, "People like that should live somewhere else." Yeah, she actually said that at a meeting with witnesses. The HUD investigation took over a year, and during that time Larissa left me alone, probably on advice from her lawyer, but the damage was done already. The investigator told my lawyer that they rarely saw cases with this much documented evidence and this many witnesses willing to come forward. The findings came back in my favor. HUD found that there had been discrimination based on disability in violation of the Fair Housing Act. Larissa was personally fined by the HUD for an amount I wasn't told, but my lawyer said it was likely in the thousands. The HOA itself was required to review their policies and procedures to ensure ADA compliance. Even though they technically had no jurisdiction over my property, they brought in a legal consultant who helped them update their enforcement guidelines and trained the board on fair housing requirements. After the HUD finding, my lawyer sent a demand letter for my legal fees and damages to be covered too. Larissa's lawyer advised her that given the federal finding against her, I had a strong case for another lawsuit. She agreed to pay my legal costs though, and a settlement amount to avoid further litigation against her. Part of the settlement included a provision that she had to resign from the HOA board and couldn't hold any position for at least 5 years, and she also agreed not to contact me or come onto my property for any reason anymore. The HOA's lawyer immediately sent a letter clarifying that her actions were not authorized by the board, and they scheduled an emergency board meeting to address the situation and ensure no further unauthorized actions were taken in the HOA's name. Apparently, her fellow board members were furious that she had exposed them to legal liability. The fallout in the neighborhood was interesting, by the way. A few neighbors expressed support afterwards, though I suspect others still sided with her. Not everyone agreed with how I handled it, but at least the harassment stopped. One neighbor did apologize for not speaking up sooner, saying she had been afraid of getting on Larissa's bad side. Larissa moved away about 6 months after everything was settled. I heard through some neighbors that her husband got a job in another state, but who knows if that was the real reason. Good riddance either way. I added a small flagpole near my driveway with an American flag, by the way. After everything that happened, I wanted to be a bit more visible about my veteran status. My van still sits in the same spot it always has. Nobody's left a note on it in over 2 years now, and the legal aid organization mentioned they might ask me to share my experience with other veterans in the future once everything is completely settled. I think I would be willing to do that. If my nightmare can help someone else know their rights and stand up for themselves, then maybe it was worth it. If there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's that people like Larissa count on you being too tired or too intimidated to fight back, and they think they can wear you down with constant harassment until you just give in to make it stop, and maybe that works on some people, I don't know. But I did not survive 2 tours and an IED blast to roll over for an HOA president with a superiority complex. My van is still ugly, according to some people's standards, I'm sure. The ramp still deploys, and my van is still bigger than a normal car, and it's still parked right there in my driveway, where it belongs, because it is my property, my vehicle, and my life. And the best part? About a year after Larissa left and the HOA actually asked if I'd be willing to speak at one of their meetings about disability awareness and fair housing law. I agreed, and it went well. It turns out that most people in the neighborhood are not like Larissa. Most people are decent once they understand the situation. They just needed someone to explain it to them instead of making assumptions. I'm not gonna lie and say everything is perfect now. I still deal with accessibility issues all the time. Like businesses that don't have proper ramps, parking lots where people park in accessible spots without permits, places where the accessible entrance is around back by the dumpsters. The world is not built for people in wheelchairs and probably won't be in my lifetime, but at least in my own driveway on my own property, I don't have to deal with someone telling me that my medical equipment is an eyesore, and that's a victory I will take. And the next one is a fantastic malicious compliance story that is titled, "I was told I can only communicate with 2 people." Okay then. I was working as an IT consultant for a very niche pharmaceutical firm. My role was to provide a production support position. I was told I was only allowed to communicate with 2 specific people on the client side. One was the head of IT and the other one was his subordinate. This was all in an email that clearly and in no uncertain terms stated that I was only allowed to communicate to those 2 individuals, and they would handle communication with the business side after I sent my root cause analysis of production incidents. I thought it was strange, but I was informed that the head of IT felt threatened by our company and thought that we were to threaten his job, so I was told to play nice so he would realize that we were really there just to help. So for a few months I would sign on and check various system logs for processing errors and AMD failures. I think he was saying "and failures" here, because AMD does not fail, I would determine the issue and fire off an email with my findings and solution suggestions. Then one day I get called into my director's office. He says the client is pissed off and wants to know about what I've been doing because they see me log on and then nothing else all day. I try to tell the director what I do, but he doesn't listen. The jerk even put me on a performance improvement plan. Next thing I know, I am in a meeting with 8 vice presidents from my firm. It's very clear that they plan to fire me by the end of the meeting. At this point I ask if I can just show them my email history, and I show them the email that states that I can only communicate with 2 specific people on the client side. I then show them the emails I sent to those 2 people as instructed, providing my analysis and suggested process improvements to handle the exceptions in the logs. Suddenly, 8 VPs no longer want to sacrifice me to appease the client, instead they take the evidence to the client. A week later, I find out that the client's head of IT was escorted out of the building by security and that apparently a college buddy of his wanted the support contract. IT had figured he would just make my firm look bad in order to cancel our contract and get a new contract for his pal. How the head of IT didn't consider that a digital trail existed is just mind-boggling to me. He was worried about us taking his job away and made it into a self-fulfilling prophecy. Funny enough though, I have a few more stories from the contract. And the next one is another fantastic malicious compliance story, which is titled "You said you wanted an ad with only one color. Okay, you got it, buddy." And by the way guys, if you enjoy all these malicious compliance stories, then please don't forget to like the video, because it would help me tremendously. So this happened years ago in my past life as a graphic designer, but I still think about it to this day. I was 22 and fresh out of college with my graphic design degree. My first gig was at an advertising company. We mainly did those really horrible print car ads that you got in your mailbox and immediately threw in the trash. You know the ones, only one font and it's huge and screaming at you. Every inch of space has a picture of car cramming 50 cars into a 7x5 inch area, you know, trash. Fresh out of school, I foolishly made suggestions on how to make actual ads and not hot garbage, but it was made clear to me very quickly and very aggressively that they wanted trash. So I complied. Now we had one client who was the client, and he brought in the most money and bought the most trash ads from us, and he also was very specific on just how bad his ads should look. Font was impact on all ads and it filled every corner of the paper. On one ad I remember him demanding I squeeze over 100 cars into a single space, and it legit looked like a Magic Eye poster by the time it went to print. I dealt with that guy and his unreasonable requests for over a year, and well, the guy amazingly got even worse. Started telling me which colors I could or couldn't use, and one by one the colors dropped out and eventually I had enough. After he said I could no longer use orange, I said, just to confirm, you do not like and do not want me to use red, orange, yellow, green, purple, pink, brown, white or black? He confirmed and I said okay. The only color left was blue, so I spent hours taking all the cars, all the fonts, all the text and all design elements and making them all the same exact blue. No shading, no highlights, just a flat blue. The end result was one giant flat blue square. Like someone took a paint roller over it. Now, I could have made a blue square in 2 seconds, but I spent hours using all the elements he told me to use to cover my ass. Because when we set that blue square to proof, the client of course blew up, called me screaming, and I replied calmly that he told me the only color I could use was blue. I used all the pictures and elements he asked for and did exactly what he wanted and made them blue. Our calls were recorded, so I didn't get in any trouble with my boss, and I got to waste several more hours remaking the same ad but with the original car pictures and elements. It was a really fun day. And the next one is another malicious compliance story, and this one is titled "Department Head Tried Throwing Me Under the Bus." Department Head asked me to prepare performance numbers for a new product launch and compare them against our existing product. When I crunched the data, the issue was obvious. The existing product significantly outperformed the new one across every key metric, obviously, because it had built a legacy and the new one didn't have time to even breathe. I raised concerns that sharing a direct comparison with senior management would undermine the launch and suggested reframing the story around long-term potential and the need for marketing support without spotlighting the old product's stronger performance. However, he rejected that approach and insisted the numbers be shared as is, making it seem like I lacked integrity. I documented my concerns and then did exactly what was asked. I posted the full comparison to senior management, clean data, clear visuals, no interpretation added. The difference in performance was impossible to miss, senior management reacted quickly and aggressively, and the launch strategy was questioned, the investment decision was challenged, and the product team was put under a microscope. During the fallout, the head attempted to distance himself by acting as though he had not yet reviewed the numbers before they were shared. Unfortunately for him, the timeline approvals and written trail made it clear otherwise. Now he is extremely pissed at everyone and stays in his room. And yeah guys, thanks for listening, I will see you again tomorrow.